Most ambitious people don't fail all at once. They drift, right? That's the part nobody warns you about for success. Not collapse, not catastrophe, not the dramatic movie version where everything explodes all at once. Most capable people slowly become someone they never consciously intended to be, right? And because the changes happen gradually, they feel reasonable while they're happening alone, but that's what makes the drift dangerous. It's a small compromise for being more efficient. It's a small change to fit the market. It's a version of yourself that works slightly better socially around people you don't actually like, right? It's a role you step into just for now that quietly becomes permanent because nothing is as permanent as temporary, right? And none of it feels important on its own. Like taken individually, who cares? Until one day, the business works, the audience is growing, the career is succeeding, but the person inside all of that quietly stops feeling trustworthy. And I think this is one of the defining psychological problems of highly ambitious people. And I don't think most people even realize it's happening while it's happening. Hi there. I'm Jonathan W. Pritchard. For 20 years, I've toured the world as a mentalist, doing Vegas, TV, performing at colleges all over the country. And what I figured out is the same psychology that works on stage is exactly what works off stage in the boardroom and life in general. And over time, I started noticing something strange, which is that the people who looked the most successful from the outside were often the people who felt the most fragmented on the inside. Not because they lacked discipline or anything, not because they lacked smarts or they didn't have ambition, usually because ambition itself had slowly rewritten who they were. Now, don't get me wrong. Yes, there's some truth to that whole you'll have to become the person who can have what it is that the person you are now wants, but there's a different version of that, right? And by the end of this video, I want to help you understand how that drift actually happens, why smart people are especially vulnerable to it, and why success often accelerates the problem instead of solving it. Okay. Because once you see this mechanism clearly, you start seeing it everywhere in founders, in creators, in executives, in your relationships, in companies. Like that's the weird thing. Like a company can lose its way too, but you see it in yourself. So, section one, the drift is gradual, right? Because people usually imagine identity change as dramatic, like a sudden personality shift, or I've discovered myself. That's almost never how it happens. Identity changes through repetition. Behavior, repeated long enough, becomes self concept. That's how you see yourself. That's the mechanism. You start acting a certain way because the environment rewards it. People respond well to it. The audience likes it. The market reinforces that. The company needs it. The relationship stabilizes around that version of you. So naturally, you do more of that. You do more of what gets rewarded. And eventually, something subtle happens. You stop performing the role, you become the role, right? Your role becomes who you are. And that's where the drift, that's where it starts, okay? Especially for highly capable people, because capable folks can survive inside identities that don't fully fit them for a very long time. They're adaptive, they're smart, they're competent, they're high functioning, like by definition. Okay. So they can optimize around a misalignment longer than most people can because they're smart enough to talk themselves into that. Okay. Which means they often don't notice how much it's costing them until years later. And that's why so many successful people quietly feel disconnected from their own life. Okay. Externally, everything works. Momentum's there, the systems are working, the results look impressive to folks on the outside. Okay. But on the inside, they're more tired than ever. They're confused about what to do next. Motivation is non existent. They start getting super resentful. The meaning and purpose just evaporates. And because the person is still performing well, nobody around them recognizes the drift happening either. That's the trap. Section 2. Success creates reinforcement pressure. Okay. This gets even more dangerous once success enters the picture because success creates reinforcement. Well, almost by definition, what you're doing is reinforced by the success. Okay. The market rewards certain behaviors, audiences reward certain identities, companies reward certain traits. And I've experienced that myself. I have a whole other channel with more than 8,000 subscribers that I built doing what worked to build that audience, but it was around software and how to use a program called Obsidian. Yes, I use that all the time, still today, but I didn't want to be just the Obsidian guy. Okay. But once something starts working, psychological flexibility out the window, right? Because now there's risk attached to any change. So if this version of you built the business, what happens if you stop being that version? That question is what traps people. And creators experience this all the time. And you'll see a whole bunch of YouTubers saying, here's why I'm leaving YouTube. I'm burned out. Well, it's because they're only doing what works, not being who they are, right? A certain personality works online. A certain communication style grows an audience. A certain version of themselves performs well publicly, so they keep feeding that version and only that version of themselves. Over time, the audience starts rewarding the performance more than the person, the character more than the person. And that creates fragmentation because now there are at least two identities, the person and the rewarded version. Founders experience the same thing. At first, they're building something meaningful, something that they can really stand behind. Then they become the operator, then the manager, then the face of the company, then the emotional stabilizer for everybody else around them. Somewhere in the middle of all that, they quietly stop asking whether the structure they built still lines up with who they actually are. And momentum replaces reflection. And momentum is dangerous because it feels productive while the drift is getting bigger and bigger. Section 3. Why smart people miss it. Intelligent people are especially vulnerable to what we're talking about because intelligence allows for excessive rationalization. Smart people can explain almost anything, whether or not it's accurate or true. Who cares? It sounds good, right? Why the compromise was necessary, why the schedule is temporary, why the role drift makes total sense, why the exhaustion is just part of growth. That's just what it takes. And why they'll, I'll just reconnect with who I am later. Well, the problem is that identity fragmentation gets bigger and bigger over time. But sure, you can survive those contradictions for years, but eventually they're going to start producing their own compounding effects that you may not like, right? You stop trusting your own decisions. You lose access to clear desire of knowing exactly what it is you want. You feel more and more reactive, and you become emotionally tired in ways that going to sleep doesn't fix, right? And eventually, people start calling this burnout. Sometimes it is, but often it's deeper than burnout. It's personal incoherence. And the person no longer fully believes in the structure that relies on them. And that changes everything. Okay. So, section 4, why this matters. This is why identity matters so much. And I don't mean as self help, not as motivational, rah rah kind of stuff, not as personal branding fluff. Identity is it's infrastructure. It informs how you make decisions, what you talk about, the systems you're using, the relationships you build, what you decide to go after, what you're executing on. When identity becomes completely disjointed like that, everything downstream destabilizes. And most people try solving that instability at the wrong layer. They attack productivity, motivation, time management, discipline. But if the structure underneath the behavior is unstable, more effort often just accelerates the problem. It just speeds up how fast the wheels are going to come off everything. Okay. Because you can't sustainably build a coherent life from a fragmented identity or way of seeing yourself. And that's the real issue. So, section 5, the payoff. Now, here's the hopeful part. Okay. Drift is gradual, which means reconstruction is gradual too. You don't fix this through one dramatic revelation, one lightning bolt from above, or one YouTube video you're watching. Okay. You fix it through repeated realignment, small corrections, clearer decisions, more honesty about what you're thinking and how you're feeling, less unconscious performance or running on autopilot, and more intentional structure. And more importantly, learning to notice where the environment has slowly trained you into becoming somebody you never wanted to be, whether that's the platform, your friends, the company. Think about the environments and how you're showing up. Because once you can see the drift, you can start correcting for it and driving back in the right direction. That's the beginning of coherence. And coherence changes everything. Okay, now, if drift is gradual, the next question is always what actually causes the drift in the first place? Because most people assume ambition protects them against this kind of fragmentation. And I think ambition often makes that worse, it accelerates it. So that's the next video. It's called Success Quietly Rewrites Identity, and I'll see you there.